Hi everyone. I'd like to thank everyone for subscribing to my page and those who have actually gone through and viewed some of the videos that I've posted over the years, since over the months since I've had this page in existence. So today, the main topic that we'll be focusing on will be the development of South African labor relations, which has played a humongous part in the existence of South Africa over the apartheid era. So these are the couple of topics that I've information that I've gathered, and I'll just be reading out. You may add your comment wherever you can, which will be beneficial because I've taken the ability to use this page as an educational page for everyone, even for myself, and I believe that we learn something each and every day. So the development of of the South African Labor Relations Act has been significant shaped off by the Labor Relations Act (LRA), which introduced a new era of collaboration between the employer and employees, and in that focus, which the middleman in that communication being the trade unions, which has formed, I think, in 1994. Correct me if I'm wrong, making a considering more work friendly, more work friendly environment for the workers. By doing that, what I'm basically saying is, now because of the Labor Relations Act, employer and employee have built a relationship whereby there are certain rules and regulations that have been put in place that will both benefit the employer and employee. The key points are about this evolution of the South African Labor Relations Act. So I'll go back to the apartheid era. During apartheid, labor relations were heavily restricted, with limited rights for trade unions and significant limitations on collaboration, beginning due to discrimination policies. Like I said, this has played a huge part in the history of shaping our country, and I'm a firm believer that we should learn from our mistakes, not ignore them. But yeah, like I said, we should. I use this platform for us to communicate and collaborate on significant aspects that we have not known. That we may use to our advantage. Post-apartheid era, the Labor Relations Act, entitled after the end of or embarked under the end of apartheid, marked a major shift towards a more democratic and inclusive labor system. So this system was based on leaders from all parties and employers of all significant roles, with attorneys. And when the ANC took over, it did not take the initiative to just put this thing on, they just put this act on their own. It was a collaboration, like I said, from all parties within the labor force to put these regulations and come up together and build these regulations, these acts, and put them into law to better build our country. Central role in the central role in the CCMA. CCMA was one of the bodies that was also introduced. So what the CCMA does, it's more of an arbitration whereby if you are as an employee you are dismissed unfairly, you can take your case down there, and it can be reviewed in the court of law by a judge and see if this dismissal was correctly and all the rules and regulations and policies were followed, and there wasn't any discrimination on unfair labor practice from the employer or the employee. The CCMA plays a critical role in resolving labor disputes through mediation, consultation, arbitration, providing a quicker, at times maybe quicker, based on the case and the magnitude and diversity of the case. Cases may differ with different companies and employee, and less formal alternatives to court proceedings costs. Also, the benefit of this is that even if you are a low earner employee, you can use this format or this platform as a way of taking your case. So that also plays a huge part in the discrimination factor that, like I spoke about. Beginning of councils, trade unions, employers can form bargaining councils to negotiate collective agreements at sector level, addressing industrial specific issues. So trade unions, the most common one would be obviously the trade union of mine workers, which was started. I don't think that was the first, one of the first unions that were started during that era. Obviously, now with seeing that with the discrimination, more black workers were more underground, and there wasn't any skills development in that phase, and they were being abused mentally and at times physically underground. So then the country and specific political leaders took it upon themselves to look into it and build a fair trade, a fair practice of trade to the labor workers down there. And the next topic I'll be looking at is sectoral determination. The government can issue sectoral determinations to set minimum employment standards for specific industries where collective bargaining is not whispered. So, or taken into consideration. Like I said, there are certain sectors that trade unions may get into. I'll use the more formal area of being office based. So obviously, if you're office based or office administrator, there wouldn't be a trade union to actually collaborate with those or come in phase with those kind of workers. So government has set up standards to try and also not discriminate or leave those workers left out. Important aspect of the Labor Relations Act are the rights to join a trade union. The government has set a standard that it's within each and every employee's right for them to join any trade union of their choice. So an employer is not allowed to block at any point of view for an employee or a group of employees to start or join a union, which is not allowed, which is unlawful, and the employer can be taken into account for that. Then strike actions. The right to strike is regulated under the Labor Relations Act, requiring proper procedures and notification before taking industrial actions. Employees are allowed to take a strike or a go slow, whichever one, but there shouldn't be any distraction to property. There shouldn't be any distraction to any government or any government structure or stopping of any government proceedings. So you are allowed to engage on any strike, but it shouldn't block the activities of the business. But now you should follow all correct procedures before you go in strike. So what that basically means is a formal complaint should be submitted to the company, the employer, and you should go through that whole medication procedure. And if that does not work out, employees are allowed by right to engage on a strike action. Then there's the other topic I'll be looking at is unfair labor practices. The Labor Relations Act prohibits unfair labor practices by both employer and trade union. Like I said, there were guidelines and rules and regulations that are developed that shouldn't discriminate on either employer or employee and the trade union. There should be fair labor practices amongst those. Trade unions, based on their sizes, shouldn't exercise their power to disrupt the employer. So there should be proper procedures that should be followed by the trade union, the employer and employee. Then we also have the labor court, which is a specialized court with judicial to hear and decide matters arise from the Labor Relations Act. So the labor court mostly focuses on any labor related issues that have the company, being the employer, employee and trade unions, have failed to discuss amongst themselves. Hence, that's when they come into action and look into that. Then challenges that the South African labor relations faces, obviously the high unemployment rate in South Africa, the informal sector. Unfortunately, with us being a third world country and still developing, so you might find there are certain industries that have informal sectors that they trade on a more cash basis and do not go through the evaluation of tax implications, tracing of money that may cause also that may also play a factor in fraudulent issues. Then you have the wage inequality, but luckily with the wage inequality, the government, as of 2 to 3 years ago, there's set an agreement that should be a minimum wage of 3.5, which has helped the sector. And now with the informal sector, that's where it plays a huge part. So in the formal, that 3.5 plays obviously it will benefit from that, but in the formal sector, which will always be a challenge, but slowly but surely as a country we're getting towards that. Thanks for listening to my page.